I don't know if this is just recency bias, right? But am I the only one who feels like 2024 has been somewhat of a year of resurgence in horror, like horror cinema? Am I crazy? I mean, I know there were some good ones last year, but I mean, they're cranking them out right now. And as we gear up for the final months of 2024, I mean, this is one of the ones that's up there for me.
Put the gun down!
And now that is the end to all of this.
And today we have Longlegs. Now this is how you do marketing for your horror film correctly. Ever since the first trailers, the first posters, the first like concept artwork for this movie came out, I was the definition of hooked. I know I keep saying it a lot because there's been a lot of like 4 out of 5 movies this year, and I do a review for it, and I say, oh, when I heard about the premise, I was in.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
But I mean, that's just kind of how it is with this. They show these cryptic images of a what looked to be a detective or somebody in the FBI trying to solve this like weird cipher and series of symbols and kind of not really straight numbers and letters, but just weird iconography combined with a very striking color palette of, I mean, how do you even describe this? It was like these dark tones, but a lot of like black and red. And again, just these cryptic messages, these trailers, they did what I think a trailer should do, and they did it so well, which is to give you an idea of the vibe of the film, like what you're gonna be signing up for basically. Maybe a little hint of the premise, but overall, they gave you, each trailer was essentially a vibe check for the film and said, hey, we got a horror film coming out. It's gonna star Micah, it's gonna star Nicolas Cage, and it's supposed to be terrifying. Different aspect ratios, perhaps a unique execution of the horror genre, kind of giving certain vibes to other horror films we've seen before. I was like, yeah, sign me up, 100%. I don't even care what this movie's about. I like the aesthetic, I like the vibe, let's get into it. For those that don't know, Longlegs is the 4th full-length feature film by director, well, this is what it goes by now. So the director, it says, is Oz Perkins, formerly known as Osgood Perkins. Fun fact, if you didn't know already, Osgood Perkins, or in this case, Oz Perkins, is the son of the actor who played the OG, the original Norman Bates in the Psycho movies. The son of one of the most iconic horror actor performances of our time, everything. Just Psycho's usually heralded as one of the greats, and for good reason. He did do an admittedly darker and more creative take on the classic fairy tale, but renamed Gretel and Hansel, so he did direct that adaptation, which I did see in theaters back in the day. He's done films before, but this by far is the film that's gonna put his name out there on the roadmap, especially in the world of horror. Suffice to say, all actors in this film do a great job, but of note we have Micah Monroe. She is our leading female protagonist, FBI agent. I don't think I directly covered her on my channel, but I've made mention to some of the films that she's been in the past. She's like really good final girl material. She's really good just female horror heroine in general. But she played the main character in It Follows, which if you've heard me talk about it, I love It Follows. It's one of those films where if I could erase my mind and rewatch a film for the first time, it'd be up there for sure. And also a lesser known one, but she was one of the 2 primary protagonists and Villains. It's a very lesser known, dark, twisted film, but I really liked Villains when I saw that. And then of course, as the enigmatic Longlegs, we barely see his face in the trailers at all, and even in the movie they kind of stay away from any direct shots. But Nicolas Cage, of course, every time that he comes up, anytime that his name comes across my lips on this channel, I always make mention. I love Nick Cage as an actor, as a person. Like, I do. I think he's a massive talent. And to see him involved in a serious horror role like this, again, me and many other people were down to clown from the word go. And the premise is nice and simple, honestly. Longlegs is a crime detective horror thriller in a way. We know that Nicolas Cage plays this mysterious serial killer that we only know by the moniker Longlegs. and Micah Monroe plays an FBI agent in the force who is basically on the case, trying to study the murders, see where the connections are, and find out where he is, how he's doing it, and try to hopefully put a stop to it. But horrors are going to ensue for sure. The marketing especially is talking about how terrifying the movie's supposed to be, and how shocking it is, and how ravaged it'll be by the end of it, etc, etc. I loved this movie. I think me and most of my friends enjoyed this. I had a couple holdouts, but we'll get to that reasoning when we approach the cons of this film. It's almost hard to put into words, but the cinematography for sure, and I mean, I'll put the fella up here, Andre Arochi, or Andres, and anybody else involved in this, I'll throw their names up here as well. But I don't know what it was, but just the direction is simple, and yet it feels, it's not really classic direction, right? Because there are some shots you can tell in the trailer where it's almost like, I don't know about a GoPro mount, but it's definitely just the way that the camera follows people or sets a stage or a scene, the composition of shots, the cinematography used in terms of what's in the foreground, what's blurred out in the background, but at the same time, sometimes it's the opposite. You're still looking in the background. Some shots are set up where you're looking for something else to happen. You're scanning almost like you're in the shoes of an FBI agent yourself. You're scanning the horizon around our characters, searching for danger, especially when some scenes are able to like disarm you and surprise you. Then going forward, you're now, as an audience member, shell-shocked. After being surprised once, you're just kind of like on constant guard, like, okay, so who's coming around what corner now? Where is this person? Even if the villain is nowhere actually on site, the presence is felt throughout. So a lot of the movie feels that way, and through the atmosphere and lighting and direction and sound and all that, it all comes across together. For me, it was a very, very immersive experience, and I love it when my films are immersive, because that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to get lost in the story and world that our artists have created for us. I keep saying the word aesthetic, but yeah, I love the aesthetic. Just saturated colors they used in maybe editing or like color correction or something, but the color palettes, whether it's reds and blacks or browns and tans, just dark like forest green, I don't know. All the colors felt like dark and saturated, but not like messy, kind of like crisp and saturated. Like they were still dark, but there was still definition between the colors. Like the movie wasn't like melting together visually. Stop me if this doesn't make any sense. But enough about direction and camera work. In terms of the narrative and the characters and the overall like idea behind this movie, definitely heavy inspiration from classic horror films. The one that's getting parallels drawn to it the most is 100% Silence of the Lambs, which they take inspiration from, luckily don't copy. But I mean, yeah, it's the whole premise. Female FBI protagonist on the trail of this psychotic serial killer, trying to avoid getting killed, trying to stop any future killings, and crack the code, solve the cipher, and hopefully win by the end of it. Performances are great as well. From our main character, I don't know if they officially confirm this or not, but it's a vibe that you get. Like, on one hand, you can extrapolate from Micah's character and say, okay, based on how she interacts with people especially, but how she perceives the case around her and tries to solve these ciphers and crack the code in the puzzle. I mean, at the very least, you know that she is a socially awkward person. That's the character that's being portrayed. I made the assumption early on that perhaps she's on the spectrum. I think she very well could be, and if so, cool, that's great representation, and I like that for the character dynamic. I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but I like that aspect of it, where it's just a socially awkward, but very competent and skilled FBI agent. A little green around the ears still, definitely traumatized from something in her past childhood, and now like this, ongoing killings and trying to help people and solve these murders. It just all worked for me. I like the way that she portrayed this character, especially in scenes of fear. I love it when actors can really show you fear through their character, whether it's stuff like not straight up hyperventilating, but panicked, louder mouth breathing, or a shaky character, or the dilation of pupils.
Is it scary being an FBI agent?
I mean, hell, you watch me live stream video games where I'm this much health and there's bad guys all around me. I'm getting nervous, I'm slipping, I'm fumbling. So I appreciate human representations of fear and adrenaline, is what I'm saying. And of course, Nick Cage, he brings some of the usual skill and charm and uniqueness to this character. I mean, yes, I know that I'm watching Nick Cage, but at the same time, there's a few scenes where I'm like, I don't I'm watching something else, this otherworldly dark being. I'm not gonna obviously spoil the movie for you, but by the end of this detective mystery crime thriller, there is still a sense of mystery. It feels like a second watch would be beneficial. I very much want to watch Longlegs again. Hopefully I can catch a second showing, knowing what I know now, to see how that would affect the experience on a second watch through. And then personally, through the film's twists, shocking moments, revelations, of which this film, like many horror films, has plenty of, I enjoyed them all. I was enraptured by this film. I was along for the ride. I love this whole experience. The only negatives I have for this film, because I know I'm gassing it up now, why I go with friends, right? Because then I discussed the film afterwards with some amigos of mine. One or two of us either had a few complaints, or one of us didn't like it at all. In fact, they loved Maxine more, and I was very curious, so we had a conversation about it. Here's the thing. Like comedy, whenever I do these reviews, fear is extremely subjective, and I think we all kind of understand that, right? Some things that scare some people don't scare us. My gal pal is terrified of snakes. I don't mind snakes at all. But then spiders, I have mild to severe arachnophobia based on how fast they move and if they jump, and just the like the way that I grew up was that in seeking solace from the world at large, I would lose myself in film and television. So if a movie or show or game is good enough, it's easier for me to get lost in it, let myself get absorbed, enraptured, sucked into the film. So for me, I'm like trying to get scared. I want to be unnerved. I want films to push the boundaries in the envelope. And yes, while I admit this film did overpromise a little bit in regard to the shocking and most gruesome stuff, no, I've seen way more violent, I've seen way more depraved, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff in horror cinema. There's definitely dark moments in the film. There's dark deeds being carried out, murder, there's satanic worship, etc., etc. I was still enraptured by it. I don't know if this film scared me, but there were definitely some intense moments that I let myself be absorbed into, where I felt anxious, I felt nervous, or I felt like a heightened sense of, adrenaline or fear. I get how some people wouldn't be spooked by this film, and the friends in question thought that it wasn't very scary, it wasn't as horrific as it was advertised to be, and the satanic worship elements of this film were not executed properly. So I get those complaints. I don't 100% agree with them, but I do agree that it did overpromise a little bit in terms of the depravity of what we were supposed to be witnessing. And this one is just like it's like a love it or hate it type of deal, right? I know a lot of people simply don't vibe with Nicolas Cage, and what he does in films, even in serious, brutal, violent, dark films, is often taken, out of context, or is often taken and clipped, and in a vacuum is comedic or hilarious.
My shirt! You're in my shirt!
Because even though he's doing something terrible or violent or crazy or whatever, if you just view it by itself, one could easily see it as comedy. So yeah, I suppose if you're watching this film and he starts hamming it up as this character of Longlegs in a very chilling, very socially awkward way,
Let me in now, and it can be nice.
then yeah, some people might not vibe with it, and I get that. But for me, I personally love what he brought to the table for that character. End of the day, I don't want to get too much into the film. I don't want to spoil the film. I just want to give you an idea of, I love this because horror, the actors did a good job, the cinematography, the aesthetic, the narrative got me. There's still this sense of mystery and dread to it, and I suppose if you want to try to dig into it, there might be some plot holes. I think that I can explain away most of the plot holes. It was a perfect experience for me, almost a full-on perfect movie. All that being said, I think Longlegs for me would be it almost pains me to say it, but a low 5 out of 5. A low 5 out of 5. My gut reaction was a 5 out of 5, but then as I've been sitting on this movie and marinating in its juices for the last several weeks, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention some of the drawbacks to it. It's been a year full of good yet divisive movies this year, if you ask me. I think it's definitely worth a watch, 100%. If you can catch it in theaters, please do yourself a favor and do just that. Definitely gonna buy it when it comes out, definitely stream it if you can't catch it in theaters, but my god, for a cinematic experience, I loved it. But there's plenty more in the pipeline as well, so thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And goodbye, travelers.